Black girl mocked for clothes. Her family arrives in a private jet. Ebony Johnson stood at the crowded terminal of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, her head bowed and her heart pounding. The noisy bustle of travelers around her did nothing to mask the taunts whispering through the cold air. 3 teenagers clad in designer brands and sporting smug grins had singled her out. They mocked her worn sneakers and thrift store jacket, without shame, their laughter echoing off the polished floors. Ebony wanted to vanish, but she held her ground, unaware that a secret far grander than any brand name coursed through her family's veins. What would happen when her unassuming past collided with an opulent truth? Ebony Johnson sat stiffly on a cold airport bench under the blinding lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Around her, the steady buzz of travelers and flight announcements echoed through the vast terminal. Her eyes drifted from the Delta counters to the windows overlooking planes taxiing across the runways. Her classmates from Westwood High were somewhere nearby, but Ebony sat alone. Their flight home had been delayed due to a mechanical issue, and while the airline promised a replacement by evening, no one seemed to know when or if it would actually leave. She glanced down at her cracked phone screen, barely 10% battery left, and still no signal. She sighed. The phone had taken months to save up for a second-hand model that helped her fit in at school, or at least try to. That illusion shattered when Tiffany Campbell walked by with her usual entourage. Tiffany wore a blinding pink Calvin Klein tracksuit and clutched the latest iPhone like a trophy. Olivia and Brittany, dressed in designer gear, trailed behind her. "Can you believe she's still wearing that jacket?" Tiffany scoffed loudly, flashing a smirk in Ebony's direction. Straight out of a thrift store horror show. The others laughed. Brittany added, "Did you see her using coupons at McDonald's earlier?" Ebony stiffened, but didn't respond. Yes, the jacket was old, but warm. Yes, she had used coupons, that's how budgeting worked. Her parents had taught her the value of humility, but people like Tiffany didn't care about values. Trying to escape the sting of their words, Ebony got up and wandered through the concourse. The airport hummed with life families huddled together, businessmen rushing voices in dozens of languages filling the air. For a moment, it reminded her how big the world was, and how small her bullies really were in it. She passed a Starbucks and eyed the menu. $3 in her wallet. Enough for a plain coffee, but the thought of being seen ordering the cheapest item made her hesitate. Tiffany would twist that into another punchline. What they didn't know was that Ebony wasn't poor, not really. Her family earned enough. She just chose to live simply. She didn't believe in flaunting money or wearing it like armor. Kindness and character mattered more, but that truth stayed locked inside. Let them think what they wanted. Still, Ebony knew this delay wasn't the end of it. As the hours stretched on and frustration mounted, her father would eventually decide he'd had enough, and when he did, everything about this layover would change. Ebony circled the concourse twice, scanning each gate for a quiet corner. Eventually, she found an unoccupied row of seats far from the busiest walkways. There she finally saw a single bar of reception flickering on her phone. She quickly dialed her dad. "Dad, are you there?" she whispered, trying not to attract attention. Her father's voice came in, faintly but clearly enough for her to hear. "Ebony, baby, you sound exhausted. Is everything all right?" She let out a deep breath. Even just hearing his voice made her tension subside. "We're stuck in Atlanta because of a mechanical delay," she explained. "I'm not sure when we'll get a new flight." Her father, James Johnson, was a man of many talents, and even more secrets Ebony was accustomed to keeping. He had a significant stake in a commercial real estate firm, and unknown to Ebony's classmates, also owned a private aviation company that provided charter flights for corporate executives. Nonetheless, Ebony's parents had raised her to be modest about their privileges. "Do you have enough money for food? A place to rest?" her dad asked. "I can wire some funds to you, or we can put you up in one of those airport hotels." Ebony bit her lip. She didn't want to broadcast her father's generosity to the classmates who were already calling her poor. The irony was painful. "I'm okay, Dad," she said. "I'll manage. The airline is supposed to pay for meals anyway." A moment of silence passed on the line. "Honey, I wish I could believe you're not being bullied again," her father said gently. Ebony's heart squeezed. She had tried her best not to let him or her mum know how bad the bullying had become. But James Johnson had an uncanny knack for sensing his daughter's emotions. He could hear the strain in her voice. "Don't worry, Dad," she said, forcing a bright tone. "It's nothing I can't handle." James sighed. "Well, let me know if things get worse. Your mother and I can step in. Don't forget we have resources more than enough, in fact, to make sure you're safe and comfortable." She cringed, dreading the idea of any flashy displays. "I will," she promised, "but no big gestures. Promise me." "I don't want a scene." He chuckled a sound that warmed her heart. "You have my word. Take care, Ebony. I love you. I love you too, Dad." Hanging up, Ebony felt a little better. For a moment, she considered telling Tiffany and the others that her father owned a private aviation company just to see the look on their faces. But that would contradict everything she stood for. Returning to the main seating area, Ebony caught sight of Tiffany again, this time rummaging through her designer purse in frustration. She overheard the tail end of Tiffany's rant. "And I can't believe my father's flight got diverted. We were supposed to have dinner tonight. Now I'm stuck in this stupid airport with plebeians." Ebony rolled her eyes internally. It always baffled her how Tiffany could be so open about flaunting her status. Then again, Tiffany's father was well known in their town, a successful real estate broker with connections in top-tier country clubs. Tiffany wore her wealth like a badge of honor, while Ebony hid hers like a well-guarded secret. Just then, an airport announcement crackled overhead. Passengers traveling on Flight 726 to San Francisco. Please be advised your departure has been postponed until further notice. We apologize for any inconvenience. A collective groan rose from the scattered group of Westwood High students who had been hoping for an imminent departure. Tiffany stomped her foot. "Ugh, this is ridiculous," she snapped, eyes flicking between the duty-free shops and Ebony's direction. Ebony pretended not to notice her glare. Ebony decided to walk away, not keen on another round of teasing. Instead, she found a corner near one of the large windows overlooking the tarmac. She watched a sleek, white, private jet taxi into position on a distant runway, a pang of envy stirring in her chest. She couldn't help but think, if only Tiffany and the others knew that my dad could send one of those for me in a heartbeat. But Ebony had made her choice. She stayed true to her personal code, never brag, never flaunt. Yet Ebony's vow would be tested sooner than she anticipated. In less than 24 hours, events would spiral in a way that not only exposed her family's wealth, but left the entire airport reeling from one scandalous revelation after another. Time dragged on. The digital clock above Gate B23 clicked from 1 hour to the next with no sign of the replacement plane. Airline representatives kept repeating a vague technical difficulties explanation. Students grew restless, some huddling around power outlets to charge their phones, others slumped in seats listening to music. The tension was thick enough to taste. Ebony decided to use the time to do something productive, catch up on homework. She found a spot near a charging station and pulled out her beat-up laptop, an older model she had purchased refurbished. She opened a Word document hoping to distract herself with an essay on The Great Gatsby, due the following week. As she typed, Ebony felt an unsettling presence and heard a snide remark in the background. "Wow, that laptop looks ancient. I bet it takes an hour just to load Google." It was Tiffany, of course, flanked by Olivia and Brittany. The trio positioned themselves behind Ebony like a wall of scorn. Ebony's shoulders tensed. She inhaled slowly, trying to channel calm. "It works fine," she replied quietly, not looking up. Tiffany smirked and flicked her ponytail. "Is that how you convince yourself it's okay to be poor? Telling yourself you don't need better things?" Olivia and Brittany giggled on cue. Ebony's cheeks heated. Part of her wanted to stand up and yell, "Do you realize my father is richer than your dad could ever dream of being?" But Ebony bit her tongue. She had learned not to gratify bullies by stooping to their level. Ignoring Tiffany, Ebony returned her gaze to the screen, focusing on typing a line about the American dream. Her professor had once said the novel was a condemnation of shallow wealth and the hollowness of people who obsessed over status. The irony was not lost on Ebony. Seriously, Ebony Tiffany persisted. "Why don't you ask your parents to buy you something new? Unless they're broke, too." This time, Ebony's composure wavered. She snapped the laptop shut and stood up, facing Tiffany. "You know nothing about my parents," she said, her eyes meeting Tiffany's with an unwavering stare. That caught Tiffany off guard. For a split second, Ebony saw something flicker in Tiffany's eyes. Uncertainty, regret, maybe. But the moment passed, replaced by the usual contempt. Tiffany shrugged. "Whatever." "Let's go get real coffee, girls," she said, directing Olivia and Brittany away. As they departed, Ebony exhaled shakily. She hated confrontation. She hated that Tiffany's cruel words still had the power to wound her. Taking a deep breath, Ebony reminded herself that this was temporary. Soon the flight would be ready, and she'd return home. She could leave Tiffany behind. But deep within her, Ebony knew she was running from more than just Tiffany's bullying. She had spent years trying to hide her parents' success, not out of shame, but to avoid attracting false friends or gold diggers. The last thing Ebony wanted was to be used for her family's money. Memories bubbled up uninvited Ebony at age 9, the day she'd brought her mother's diamond-encrusted watch to show and tell against her parents' instructions. A classmate's mother realized it was worth more than her entire yearly salary. The scandal that followed had left Ebony feeling exposed and guilty. Newspapers in her small town wrote about the wealthy Johnson family. Ever since Ebony had resolved to never flaunt her family's money again. She shoved those memories aside. Closing her eyes, she took another breath and reopened her laptop. The Great Gatsby's text stared back at her. She forced herself to concentrate, typing out a few more sentences, each word a small victory over Tiffany's barbs. Yet the airport's stale air and unrelenting fluorescent lights weighed heavily on Ebony. She wondered if she should call her dad again. Maybe there was another flight on a different airline that her parents could arrange. Anything to escape Tiffany's shadow. Suddenly, Ebony felt a tap on her shoulder. It was another student from her class, Kenneth Park. He was shy with a mop of dark hair and large-rimmed glasses always buried in a science book. Despite that, he managed a friendly smile. "Hey, Ebony," he said softly. I saw what happened. That wasn't cool of them." Ebony gave a polite nod. "Thanks, Kenneth. I'll survive," she replied. He hesitated, then shrugged awkwardly. "I'm sure you will. Actually, I was thinking of grabbing a snack. You want to join me, safety in numbers, especially against them," he said, with a wry smile. Ebony's heart warmed. "That sounds nice," she said. "Let's go." The two walked towards the food court, a small moment of camaraderie shining through the gloom. Ebony felt grateful for Kenneth's presence. Not everyone at Westwood High was lost in brand mania. Maybe she could get through this ordeal with her dignity intact. Still, she had no clue how quickly everything would spiral the next day, or how her family's private jet would transform an embarrassing delay into a scandal everyone at the airport would be talking about. Morning arrived with little fanfare. Ebony had slept in an uncomfortable airport chair, her jacket serving as a blanket. The overhead lights never went off completely, making it impossible to fall into deep sleep. As she stirred awake, she saw that Tiffany, Olivia, and Brittany had commandeered a row of seats further away, presumably after whining to airport staff for some perks. They were surrounded by fancy pillows that Ebony guessed they must have bought at some upscale airport boutique. Nearby, Kenneth was still dozing, his headphones askew. Ebony smiled, glad for his quiet companionship last night. She stretched her stiff limbs and rose, deciding to splash cold water on her face in the bathroom. On the way, she passed an airport TV screen. CNN was reporting on inclement weather in parts of the country, adding to widespread flight cancellations. Anxiety churned in her gut. Would they be stuck another night after freshening up? Ebony made her way toward the nearest Starbucks, the same one she'd bypassed yesterday. She felt an urge to treat herself, even if just to a simple black coffee. Standing in line, Ebony scrolled through social media on her phone, only to see Tiffany's Instagram posts mocking the airport fiasco. One picture showed Ebony from behind with a caption reading, "This is what poor looks like at the airport." Upgrade needed. Ebony's cheeks flamed. She blinked back tears of anger and humiliation. That was a low blow even for Tiffany. Yet Ebony resisted the temptation to retaliate online. She believed in facing problems in person, not over social media. But how next? Please, the barista called. Ebony fumbled her phone into her pocket and ordered a small black coffee. As she stepped aside to wait, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen and saw her dad's number. Ebony quickly answered. "Hey, Dad," she greeted, forcing a small smile she hoped would translate into her tone. "I have news," James said, sounding uncharacteristically tense. "Your mother and I have been monitoring the situation in Atlanta. With the weather delays, it looks like your flight might not take off for another 24 hours, maybe more." Ebony's heart sank. She opened her mouth to protest, but her father continued. "Listen, we're sending our plane. I know you said no big gestures, but you're stuck, and I can't let you just stay there without any clarity on when you can come home." She winced, imagining the spectacle of a private jet picking her up. "Dad, are you sure I don't want to draw attention? We're positive. Besides, this isn't just for you. We have some business in Atlanta to take care of, so it makes perfect sense for the jet to come. After that, we'll fly you home. Don't worry, just meet the pilot at the private terminal once I give you the go-ahead. We'll handle the rest." She sighed. On one hand, relief washed over her she wouldn't be stranded indefinitely. On the other hand, dread twisted in her stomach, thinking of Tiffany's reaction. But Ebony knew her father was right. Her mental health was fraying under the constant bullying. "Okay, Dad. Keep me posted," she said. Her voice subdued. As she hung up, the barista called her name. Ebony collected her coffee and found a quiet corner to gather her thoughts. It was happening. The very secret she'd guarded so fiercely was about to be revealed in the most public place imaginable. She sipped her coffee, the bitter taste reminding her she still had some measure of control. It wasn't like she was suddenly going to brag to Tiffany and the others. She'd handle this discreetly, she told herself. Maybe she could slip away without Tiffany noticing. That was wishful thinking, but Ebony clung to it anyway. When she returned to the general waiting area, Ebony found Kenneth awake, rummaging through his backpack for a breakfast bar. She debated telling him about her father's plan, but something held her back, fear that word would spread, or maybe even shame that she'd been pretending to be less privileged than she truly was. So she stayed silent. Yet Ebony couldn't help the swirl of emotions: relief, anxiety, anticipation. Her father's private jet was coming, and with it a storm of revelations that would transform her from the poor girl in the old jacket to someone Tiffany and her friends never saw coming. The day dragged on. The airline still had no real update on when Flight 726 would be ready. Passengers milled about frustration growing. Some demanded vouchers for food and hotel stays. Others argued with airline staff. Tiffany's group had plastered scathing comments all over social media, tagging the airline's accounts. As lunch approached, Ebony checked her phone incessantly for an update from her dad. Still nothing. Meanwhile, Tiffany's jabs continued. Olivia snapped pictures of Ebony and Kenneth sharing a bag of budget-friendly chips, then posted them with insulting captions like "Airport Feast for Peasants." Kenneth tried to brush it off, but Ebony could see it rattled him. He was an introvert, unused to public ridicule. Yet Ebony was touched that he didn't abandon her, despite being a target himself now. In a quiet moment, she thanked him. He shrugged, replying, "Better to endure it with a friend, right?" As Ebony lifted her phone to check messages again, a girl from their class, Maria Delgado, rushed up. Her eyes sparkled with gossip. "Ebony, did you hear the rumor?" Ebony frowned. "What rumor?" "They say someone's private plane is coming here to pick up a Westwood student," Maria gushed. "Tiffany thinks it's for her because her father is loaded. She's been bragging that her dad arranged it so she can fly out of here without the rest of us. Is that crazy, or what?" Ebony's throat went dry. Tiffany was claiming the private jet was for her. Ebony fought the urge to laugh at the irony. Tiffany's father was successful, yes, but not the kind to charter a private jet on a whim. And Ebony knew exactly whose private jet was on the way. "Well, guess Tiffany's getting her dream come true," Ebony said neutrally, hoping her trembling voice didn't give her away. Maria rolled her eyes. "Ugh, I bet. She's been making a scene, telling everyone how she'll be posting photos from first-class seats." But who knows if it's actually true? Ebony nodded and watched Maria run off to share the rumor with someone else. The pit in Ebony's stomach grew. This was the worst-case scenario. Tiffany was about to be humiliated when the truth came out, and Ebony dreaded the fallout. A few hours later, Ebony's phone buzzed. It was her dad. "Pilot arrives at 4:00 p.m. Meet him at Private Aviation Terminal Hangar 12. Tell your teacher you have alternate travel arrangements. It's the best I could do." Ebony's pulse raced. The current time was 3:30 p.m. She had exactly half an hour to figure out how to slip away. She approached her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, who was busy organizing a head count of the students. The older woman looked stressed, lines of worry etched into her forehead. Mrs. Henderson. Ebony began clearing her throat. I have a different way home. My dad. He's arranged for me to fly privately." The words felt strange leaving her mouth. Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows soared. "Privately? You mean like a chartered plane?" Ebony nodded. She expected a reprimand or a lecture, but Mrs. Henderson's eyes softened. "Honey, I'm not going to pry into your personal life. If you have a safe and confirmed way home, that's fine. I'll mark you off our flight manifest. Just please keep me updated." Relief flooded Ebony. "Thank you," she murmured, handing Mrs. Henderson her phone so the teacher could confirm details with Ebony's parents. The older woman nodded sagely, though Ebony saw curiosity dancing in her eyes. She must have been wondering why Ebony always appeared so financially challenged if her parents could just charter a jet. Ebony gathered her backpack, tried to look casual, and glanced around for an inconspicuous exit. Before she could take a step, Kenneth tapped her shoulder. Where are you going? She paused, not wanting to lie. Kenneth was the only person who'd shown her kindness. I'm heading out. My dad arranged a private flight. His eyes widened, then flickered with realization. So, you're the one with the plane, not Tiffany. Ebony chewed her lip. Yes. Please don't tell anyone. I've been trying to keep it low-key. Kenneth's reaction was a gentle smile. I won't say a word, but you should probably get going before Tiffany catches wind. She felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Kenneth. You've been amazing. She gave him a quick, impulsive hug, then turned to leave. But fate had other plans. Just as Ebony headed toward the exit, Tiffany materialized, accompanied by her entourage. And just where do you think you're going? Tiffany demanded, her eyes narrowed. Ebony's heart pounded. She didn't want a confrontation. I just have to handle something, she said vaguely. Tiffany smirked. It wouldn't be that private jet, would it? Because newsflash, that plane is here for me. My dad set it up. We're leaving this dump, so don't even try to claim otherwise. Olivia and Brittany nodded in agreement, fueling Tiffany's arrogance. Ebony swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Tiffany, but Tiffany cut her off, flipping her hair. You think I'm stupid that you can steal my ride? Please, don't embarrass yourself. Ebony almost laughed at the absurdity. She took a breath, searching for words that wouldn't incite a riot. Tiffany, I don't want to fight. Just ask the pilot whose name is on the flight plan. Tiffany rolled her eyes. Trust me, I will, she hissed, and with that, she spun on her heel, leading her posse away. Ebony watched them leave, dread gripping her chest. The stage was set for a showdown she never wanted, and time was ticking. She had less than 15 minutes to reach the private terminal before the pilot arrived. She hoisted her backpack and rushed off, every footstep echoing like a countdown to the inevitable collision of truths. Ebony followed the signs pointing toward the airport's private aviation sector. The hustle and bustle of the main concourse faded behind her, replaced by quieter hallways and restricted access doors. She had only been in a private terminal once before for a family holiday trip. It was surreal how different it felt from the chaos of commercial travel. No lines, no loudspeaker announcements, no swarms of passengers. Instead, a handful of security guards stood watch, occasionally checking badges. At the final security gate, Ebony flashed her ID and explained she was meeting a pilot for a private charter. The guard checked a roster on his tablet. Ebony Johnson, he asked, scanning her ID. You're listed here. Go on through. Hangar 12 is down that corridor. Ebony nodded gratefully, stepping through. The space was sleek, furnished with plush chairs and a well-lit lounge area. Large windows offered a panoramic view of small jets lined up on the tarmac. Her heart pounded. Soon she would board one of them. She spotted a sharply dressed man near the lounge's entrance, wearing a pilot's uniform. He carried a clipboard with a big Johnson Aviation logo at the top. Recognizing Ebony from a photo, James must have provided the pilot approached. Miss Johnson, I presume he asked, tipping his cap politely. I'm Captain Alvarez. Your father sent me to pick you up. Ebony mustered a small smile. Yes, that's me. Thank you for coming. Captain Alvarez returned the smile warmly. We're prepping the jet. Should be ready to taxi in about 20 minutes. Would you like to board now, or wait here in the lounge? Before Ebony could answer, the private terminal doors swung open. In strutted Tiffany, Olivia, and Brittany, each wearing a smug expression. Several airport staff trailed behind, clearly flustered. Tiffany marched straight toward Captain Alvarez, ignoring Ebony entirely. Finally, Tiffany declared haughtily, I'm Tiffany Campbell, the one whose father arranged this flight. Are we ready to go? Captain Alvarez blinked, confusion momentarily etched on his face. He glanced at Ebony, then back at Tiffany. I'm sorry, Miss Campbell, but this flight is reserved for Ebony Johnson and her party. Tiffany's eyes widened. What, that's impossible? My dad said. A second pilot stepped forward, clearing his throat. Miss Campbell, could you provide the flight tail number or booking confirmation for your charter? Tiffany faltered, reaching for her phone. I don't have it. But my dad said he'd call me if anything changed. This is obviously for me. Ebony steeled herself. She knew the moment had arrived for the truth to burst out. She met Captain Alvarez's eyes and gave him a small nod. He turned to Tiffany. I'm sorry, Mum, but this is specifically for the Johnson family. We have no record of a Campbell charter. Perhaps you should check with your father again. Tiffany's face flushed scarlet. She whirled on Ebony, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. What is going on here? Are you scamming them or something? Ebony's stomach churned. She hated public scenes, but there was no escape now. No scam, Tiffany, she said softly. It's my father's company. My dad owns Johnson Aviation. That's the private airline you thought was yours. A hush fell over the room. Olivia and Brittany stared at Ebony as though seeing her for the first time. Tiffany's jaw dropped. Her eyes flicked to the large Johnson Aviation logo on the pilot's clipboard, then to Ebony's expression, an odd mixture of apology and resolve. You're lying. Tiffany stammered, her usual bravado shattered. Ebony sighed. I'm not lying. I tried to keep my family's business out of things, but we've been delayed too long. My dad offered to fly me home. Tiffany's face morphed from shock to fury. She whirled on the airport staff behind her. This is ridiculous. My father said he was getting a private flight for me. Why isn't it here? A middle-aged airport manager stepped forward, hands raised, in a placating gesture. Miss Campbell, we don't have any record of a flight booked in your name for today. If you'd like to charter a jet, you'll have to file a request. And I don't want your excuses, Tiffany shrieked. The staff looked taken aback, and Olivia and Brittany cowered, unsure how to react. Tiffany glared at Ebony, tears of frustration shimmering in her eyes. You set me up to look like a fool. Ebony's throat tightened. Part of her empathized with Tiffany's humiliation. But she couldn't let the accusation go unanswered. Tiffany, I didn't plan this. I'm sorry you believed the rumor was about you, but I never said it was. Oh, shut up, Tiffany, spat her voice, cracking. She spun around and stormed out of the lounge, Olivia and Brittany trailing awkwardly behind. The door slammed shut, leaving Ebony feeling both liberated and nauseous. Captain Alvarez cleared his throat gently. Well, that was interesting. Shall we board Miss Johnson? Ebony nodded, though her legs felt like jelly. She followed him to the tarmac, climbing the steps into the sleek jet, emblazoned with the Johnson Aviation logo. Inside plush leather seats, polished wood paneling, and a fully stocked refreshment bar awaited her. It was a stark contrast to everything Tiffany had mocked her for. As she settled into a seat, Ebony exhaled slowly. Her secret was out. Tiffany's meltdown was fresh in her mind, but Ebony couldn't dwell on it. Soon she would be home, far from the airport's tension. What she didn't realize was that for Tiffany, this wasn't the end. It was a tipping point that would spark a series of shocking twists, and Ebony would soon find herself in the middle of even greater drama than before. The private jet's engines roared softly as it lifted off the runway, gliding smoothly into the overcast Atlanta sky. Ebony gazed out the window, marveling at how the city's skyline became a miniature model. Her relief at leaving behind the airport chaos was mixed with a strange cocktail of guilt and triumph. She didn't enjoy humiliating Tiffany, but a small part of her felt vindicated. Perhaps now Tiffany would realize money doesn't define a person's worth. Captain Alvarez's voice crackled over the intercom. Good afternoon, Miss Johnson. We're cruising at 30,000 feet. Estimated time to your home airport is just under 2 hours. Please let us know if you need anything." Ebony thanked him, reclining in the plush seat. She eyed the refreshments, eventually grabbing a bottle of water. Her phone connected to the jet's Wi-Fi, and messages poured in from classmates who had discovered her secret. Some were congratulatory, others were downright confused. She was about to power off her phone when an email from her mum, Grace Johnson, popped up. "Hey, sweetheart. Glad you're on your way home. Dad told me about the incident at the private terminal. Don't worry about Tiffany and her drama. We love you and can't wait to see you." Mum Ebony smiled, feeling a wave of warmth. She decided to put the phone away and immerse herself in the comfort of the flight. For a few minutes, she actually relaxed, sipping water and unwinding from the sleepless night. Suddenly, the cabin lights flickered. A faint tremor ran through the jet's frame. Ebony's heart skipped a beat. She heard the engines strain, and the plane dipped momentarily before leveling out. Captain Alvarez's voice returned, slightly tense. "Miss Johnson, please fasten your seatbelt. We're experiencing unexpected turbulence. We'll navigate around it as quickly as possible." Ebony's pulse quickened. She buckled in, gripping the armrests. Turbulence was not unusual, but this felt different. The jet shook again, more violently this time. Overhead bins rattled. Ebony forced herself to breathe steadily. Minutes stretched on, each accompanied by another jolt or dip. The seatbelt sign blinked ominously. Ebony could hear faint chatter from the cockpit, but the words were muffled. Her imagination ran wild. Was there a storm? A technical issue? Suddenly, Captain Alvarez announced, "We need to make an emergency landing. One of our indicators shows a potential engine anomaly. We're diverting to the nearest airport. No need to panic, but stay seated and buckled." Ebony's mouth went dry. She had never experienced an emergency landing before. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she remembered her father's voice, telling her to stay calm in a crisis. Her mind reeled with questions. Was the plane going to crash? Would they be safe? The pilots acted swiftly, descending through dark clouds. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating thick grey masses swirling around them. The jet shook so violently, Ebony thought her teeth would chatter out of her skull. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, even though she wasn't particularly religious. "Please let us land safely." Finally, the plane emerged from the thick cloud cover, revealing a small regional airport below. Ebony glimpsed the runway lights, shining like a beacon. The jet aligned with the tarmac, the landing gear lowering with a reassuring thud. For a harrowing few moments, Ebony felt her stomach lurch as the plane sped toward the ground. Then, with a jarring impact, the wheels touched down. The jet screeched along the runway, eventually coming to a trembling halt. Captain Alvarez's exhale of relief crackled through the intercom. "We've landed safely. Please remain seated until the situation is assessed." Ebony's heart hammered in her chest. She clung to her seatbelt, trying to process what had just happened. Moments later, the cabin door opened to a flurry of paramedics and airport staff, all eager to check on her. Shaken but uninjured, Ebony unbuckled her belt, stepping carefully onto the runway. The thick smell of burnt rubber and hot asphalt assaulted her senses. Under glaring runway lights and a light drizzle, Ebony found herself standing in front of an unfamiliar terminal building. All she felt was gratitude for being alive. But little did she know this unexpected landing would trigger an entirely new series of events, one that would cast her back into Tiffany's orbit and reveal secrets neither girl was prepared to face. Word of the emergency landing spread fast. Within an hour, Ebony was seated in a small waiting area of the regional airport while mechanics inspected the jet. Captain Alvarez, looking apologetic, explained that a malfunctioning sensor had triggered the emergency protocol. They weren't sure how long repairs would take. Ebony called her parents, who were understandably frantic. "I'm okay," she assured them, her voice trembling with residual adrenaline. We landed safely. The pilot says I might have to wait until the jet is cleared, or another plane comes. James Johnson promised to dispatch a backup aircraft if needed. Ebony tried to stay calm, but the night's events left her nerves raw. After grabbing a soda from a vending machine, she sat shoulders slumped, replaying the near disaster in her mind. About half an hour later, the door to the waiting area opened, and Ebony's breath caught. In walked Tiffany Olivia and Brittany, along with a frazzled Mrs. Henderson and several other classmates. Ebony's heart raced in confusion. What are they doing here? Mrs. Henderson spotted Ebony first. She hurried over her face, a mix of concern and relief. Ebony, are you all right? We heard about an emergency landing and realized it was your jet. Ebony stood her mind reeling. I'm fine, but why are you here? Mrs. Henderson. The older woman sighed. Our flight from Atlanta got cancelled entirely. No new plane was provided, and then the weather issues caused the airline to divert us here. They bussed us to this regional airport so we could catch a connecting flight in the morning. Realization dawned on Ebony. So the entire group ended up here. She glanced over Mrs. Henderson's shoulder, noticing Tiffany standing stiffly by the door, her gaze averted. If Ebony had to guess, Tiffany was still seething from the private jet revelation. The rest of the classmates huddled in small groups, eyeing Ebony curiously. Some offered nods or weak smiles. Kenneth stood off to the side, giving Ebony a supportive wave. Ebony took a breath, stepping forward to address the group as a whole. I'm okay, everybody. The landing was scary, but I'm fine. A chorus of relieved murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Henderson nodded. We're booked for a commercial flight out of here first thing in the morning. Ebony, if your jet can't be fixed, you can join us. Let's stay together. Part of Ebony wanted to protest. She dreaded the idea of another round of bullying from Tiffany. But she also knew it wouldn't be wise to separate from the group in an unfamiliar airport. Plus, Ebony had no idea when the jet would be operational again. All right, she said softly, forcing a polite smile. As the group settled into the cramped waiting area, Ebony overheard Tiffany's biting remarks whispered to Olivia. I still don't understand how Ebony of all people turned out to be some secret heiress. It's absurd. Ebony clenched her jaw. She wanted to tell Tiffany that her family's means didn't define her character. But this wasn't the time for confrontation. The stress of the emergency landing weighed too heavily on everyone. Night fell, and the airport staff allowed the stranded group to use a vacant lounge area with reclining chairs. It wasn't exactly a hotel, but it was better than sleeping on a hard floor. Ebony grabbed a spot in a corner, determined to keep a low profile. She could hear Tiffany and her entourage whispering on the other side of the room. Kenneth chose a seat next to Ebony, offering her a sympathetic grin. A few hours into the night, Ebony woke to the sound of hushed arguing. She squinted in the dim light and saw Tiffany pacing near the lounge's entrance phone, pressed to her ear voice, urgent. What do you mean you can't come get me? Tiffany hissed. Dad, you promised. No, I can't wait until tomorrow afternoon. This place is a dump. Tiffany's voice cracked. Ebony realized with a start that Tiffany sounded genuinely vulnerable, like a child who'd been abandoned. Curiosity mingled with pity. Ebony watched Tiffany end the call and slump against the wall, burying her face in her hands. Brittany and Olivia slept nearby, oblivious. For a moment, Ebony debated whether to approach Tiffany or not. Don't be ridiculous, she told herself. She'd only lash out at you. Still, Ebony couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Tiffany's bravado was starting to crack. And if the night's string of disasters was any indication, Ebony suspected there was more to Tiffany's story than met the eye. Little did she know just how complicated and shocking that story was, a story that would soon reveal Tiffany's desperate attempt to salvage her image by any means necessary. even if it meant betrayal that ran deeper than Ebony could have ever imagined. Dawn broke through the lounge's windows, revealing exhausted faces and stiff limbs. Ebony rubbed her eyes, recalling the fitful sleep she'd managed. Around her, classmates stretched, yawned, and checked their phones for updates. Mrs. Henderson announced that their commercial flight would depart in 3 hours, so they needed to get moving soon. Ebony sat up, wincing at the crick in her neck. She noticed Tiffany quietly gathering her things, dark circles under her eyes, her once perfect hair disheveled. Even Olivia and Brittany seemed subdued. Ebony's mind wandered to the heated phone call she'd overheard. Is Tiffany's father really leaving her to figure this out on her own? Ebony wondered. As the group shuffled toward the security checkpoint, Ebony lagged behind, checking her phone for any message from Captain Alvarez. A text had come in earlier. Jet needs engine part replacement. Earliest is tomorrow morning. I'm sorry, Miss Johnson. Let me know if you need anything. She sighed. Another day's delay. She'd have to continue traveling with her classmates. So be it. She thought, steeling herself for whatever barbs Tiffany might still hurl her way. Yet the unexpected happened. As Ebony joined the queue, Tiffany approached, her eyes cast downward. Olivia and Brittany hovered a few steps away, looking uncertain. Hey, Tiffany, began softly. Ebony tensed, expecting an insult. Instead, Tiffany's voice was subdued. I wanted to say I'm sorry about everything. I've been really mean to you, and it wasn't fair. Ebony blinked, trying to gauge Tiffany's sincerity. She noticed Tiffany's trembling hands, the dejected slump of her shoulders. This didn't seem like an act. Thank you, Ebony managed. That means a lot. Tiffany exhaled relief flickering across her features. She glanced away as though embarrassed. I guess I always assumed you had it rough, and that made me feel superior or something. But after last night, and seeing how your family actually has enough money to fly you privately, I feel like I was the fool. Ebony shook her head, her voice gentle. Tiffany, I don't think money makes anyone superior or inferior. That's the whole point. I never flaunted it because I don't want it to define who I am. Tiffany nodded slowly. She gestured for Ebony to step out of line, away from the curious ears of their classmates. Look, I know I probably don't deserve your sympathy. But my dad is. He's not who everyone thinks he is. All that talk about him arranging a private jet. He told me to keep up appearances because his business is failing. He can't afford to bail me out of this mess right now. Ebony stared, her heart constricting. So Tiffany's father is going broke. That revelation cast Tiffany's bullying in a new light. Perhaps it was fueled by desperation to maintain a facade of wealth. Ebony's earlier resentment softened, replaced by empathy. I'm sorry, Ebony said quietly. That must be really hard. Tiffany shrugged, tears brimming in her eyes. I've been terrified of anyone finding out. I guess that's why I lashed out at you. Seeing your thrift store clothes, I assumed you were just actually poor. It made me feel safer, I guess, to put someone else down. I know that doesn't excuse it. Ebony swallowed. She understood the fear of being judged for one's financial situation, though from a different angle. It's not okay what you did. But I get it, she said gently. You felt cornered, so you attacked first. Tiffany nodded, wiping a stray tear. Anyway, I'm done. I'm tired of lying and tired of hurting people just to save face. Maybe we can have a truce, if you can forgive me, that is. Ebony paused, remembering every cruel word, every humiliating post. But seeing Tiffany so raw and vulnerable, Ebony found it in her heart to extend mercy. All right, she whispered, offering a tentative smile. Truce. They rejoined the line, falling into an uneasy silence. Olivia and Brittany looked at Ebony curiously, no doubt confused by the sudden shift in Tiffany's demeanor. Kenneth caught Ebony's eye, raising an eyebrow in question. Ebony shrugged a subtle signal that something had changed. Inside Ebony's chest, a strange hope took root. Perhaps this entire ordeal, from the delayed flight to the emergency landing, had led to an unexpected reconciliation. But Ebony also knew that relationships forged in crisis could be fragile. And sure enough, fate had more tests in store, tests that would push Tiffany's newfound humility and Ebony's forgiveness to the limit. After clearing security, the Westwood group navigated toward their gate. The small airport buzzed with travelers trying to rebook missed connections. Ebony, Tiffany, and the rest of the classmates settled into plastic chairs near Gate 4. The overhead screen displayed their flight information, promising departure in an hour. Mrs. Henderson, looking more relaxed, praised everyone for their patience. "We'll be home soon, folks," she said, relief in her voice. "Let's keep it together for just a bit longer." Ebony nodded, grateful the ordeal was nearly over. She sat next to Tiffany, who was scrolling through her phone with a guarded expression. In an attempt to show goodwill, Ebony asked, "You okay?" Tiffany shrugged. "I'll be fine. Just deleting some pictures from my Instagram, the ones where I trashed you." Ebony's heart stirred with compassion. "Thanks," she said softly. Before Tiffany could respond, a shout erupted from the other side of the gate. Tiffany Campbell, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a receding hairline, stormed toward them. Ebony recognized him from local news articles, Tiffany's father, Nathan Campbell. Tiffany paled, rising to meet him. "Dad, I thought you said you couldn't come." Nathan's face was flushed with rage. He pointed a trembling finger at Tiffany's phone. "I told you to stop airing our family's dirty laundry online. The last thing I need is people suspecting that Campbell Real Estate is struggling. Now your posts are going viral, and I have investors calling me to ask if we're bankrupt." Tiffany's cheeks blanched. "I didn't mean," Nathan grabbed her wrist, ignoring the wide-eyed stares from onlookers. "You're making a fool of yourself and of me. I came here to fix it. And you." He shot Ebony a scathing look, as though blaming her for Tiffany's meltdown. Ebony's skin crawled. She noticed Tiffany's lower lip quiver. Fear radiated from Tiffany's eyes. Ebony's stomach twisted, an urge to intervene, warring with her uncertainty. She glanced at Mrs. Henderson, who was stepping forward, alarmed. "Mr. Campbell, please calm down," Mrs. Henderson said, her tone firm. "This is a public space." Nathan sneered. "I'm fully aware of that. Perhaps if you teachers had better control over your students, my daughter wouldn't be humiliating our family online." Mrs. Henderson bristled. Tiffany turned her gaze to the floor, tears forming. Ebony's heart pounded. She couldn't stand by silently. Summoning her courage, she stepped forward, voice steady but quiet. "Mr. Campbell, Tiffany hasn't really posted anything like that. She's going through a tough time. Maybe you could talk somewhere more private." Nathan scoffed, glaring at Ebony. "Who do you think you are, girl? Stay out of my family's business." At that moment, Ebony felt a different presence behind her. She turned to see James Johnson, her father, striding through the terminal doors, his posture exuding quiet authority. He must have driven from the regional airport entrance or arranged quick passage from security. Ebony's eyes widened with relief and surprise. Dad James approached calmly, nodding at Mrs. Henderson, then at Ebony. Finally, he locked eyes with Nathan Campbell. Campbell, is that any way to speak to a child?" His voice was firm-edged with the kind of confidence that came from running successful businesses. Nathan bristled. "And who are you supposed to be?" James extended his hand, though Nathan didn't take it. James Johnson, Ebony's father. Nathan's eyes widened slightly. The owner of that private jet. James nodded slowly. Among other things. But more importantly, I'm a father here to ensure no one mistreats my daughter or her classmates. He shifted his gaze to Tiffany, whose tears now glistened on her cheeks. And that includes Tiffany, who might need kindness and understanding more than anything else. Right now. The terminal went silent, passengers and staff looking on in fascination. Nathan Campbell glanced around, realizing he had an audience. His bluster wavered. He released Tiffany's wrist, clearing his throat. Well, Mr. Johnson, perhaps if your daughter hadn't, James cut him off politely but firmly. My daughter has done nothing wrong. If Tiffany's struggling, we should help not scold her in front of everyone. Let's discuss matters civilly. Tiffany trembled, whispering, Dad, please. Nathan's posture deflated, confronted by James's calm demeanor and the critical eyes of everyone around him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Finally, he muttered, Fine. We'll talk privately then, yanked Tiffany by the arm, leading her away from the crowd. Ebony gazed after them, heart pounding. She turned to her father, tears of gratitude threatening to spill. James pulled her into a hug, gently stroking her hair. You okay, sweetheart? He asked. She nodded, exhaling a shaky breath. The final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Tiffany's father wasn't some almighty provider, but a man desperate to maintain a failing empire. Meanwhile, Ebony had the family support she needed. Within minutes, Tiffany returned, eyes red, but with her head held higher. Nathan trailed behind, subdued. He quietly asked Mrs. Henderson for a moment of her time. The two adults stepped aside, presumably to discuss next steps. Tiffany approached Ebony, biting her lip. Your dad, he stood up for me. No one's ever done that before. Ebony offered a small smile. He's good at reading people. Even if you've been awful to me, he can see someone who needs help. Tiffany's eyes flicked to James, who was talking quietly with Kenneth. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Ebony shrugged, tears finally spilling onto her cheeks. That's what people should do, Tiff. We help each other no matter what. Money doesn't change that. A hush of understanding passed between them. The final boarding call rang out for the commercial flight, snapping everyone to attention. The students quickly gathered their belongings. Ebony, her father Tiffany, and the rest of the class lined up to board. Ebony's seat was upgraded by the airline as an apology for the earlier fiasco, and she insisted on sharing it with Tiffany so they could talk further. As they settled into the plane, Ebony felt a surge of gratitude for survival, for the chance to reconcile, and for the knowledge that real wealth lay in compassion. Tiffany, her arrogance now tempered, clung to Ebony as a lifeline. The plane ascended, carrying them toward home, and a future neither had fully anticipated. Would Tiffany transform into a better person? Could Ebony finally find peace among her peers? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. Karma had played out in shocking twists, and both girls were forever changed by the turbulence, literal and emotional, that had beset their journey. And there you have it, a whirlwind of drama, unexpected revelations, and life-altering lessons. What began as a typical airport delay spiraled into a clash of insecurities, hidden wealth, and bruised egos. Ebony's quiet resilience and Tiffany's desperate facade collided in a single fateful showdown, proving once again that money doesn't define character, and that compassion above all can bridge even the widest social gaps. Did this story keep you on the edge of your seat? Are you still wondering about Tiffany's future or Ebony's next chapter? Be sure to hit that like button. If you found yourself rooting for Ebony's humble strength or empathizing with Tiffany's fall from grace. Don't forget to share this video with friends who love a juicy story packed with hard-hitting karma. And most importantly, click that subscribe button to join us for more riveting tales filled with drama, heart, and powerful life lessons. Safe travels, everyone.